Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that kind introduction. And you're quite right. The titles of the books are fantastic. The content isn't. It's really kind of you to invite me to come along today. And I know that there is a convention of introducing a speaker in that sort of style. You know, a consultant who's worked with a number of high-profile organisations. But I stand before you, I'm sorry to say, as a customer. I know people are starting to look terrified already. I'm not a mature student. I'm not here. But I stand before you as a customer. And what we're going to talk about for the, I'm not sure if Sarah warned you, the next 16 hours, are the reasons that we seem to struggle as a nation with the concept of customer service excellence. I think you may disagree with me. Hopefully the next 45 minutes or so will get you on my side. But the message that I'm bringing today is that if you're able to see yourselves through the eyes of your customer, not only, quite logically, does that give you an idea as to what you might be able to do differently, but often the shock of being exposed to what it's really like can act as a catalyst. Now hopefully as we go through the next 45 minutes you'll see why I think we need a catalyst. Because I'm of the view that customer service could be a little better. And I should also introduce myself. You've probably gathered by now I come from even further north than Yorkshire. I'm a resident of County Durham. I was brought up in a town called Stanley. Anybody from that part of the world? Oh yeah? Are you from Stanley?
No, from Durham.
From Durham. Well, that's quite posh really though, isn't it? Yeah. I was watching an episode of Our Vida Saint Pet once. And as I'm sure you've made observations, which may have been politically incorrect, about the social class of the main characters of that particular programme. I know you're all old enough to have seen it. And at one point in one episode, one of the characters gets into a taxi and asks to be driven to Concert, which is the next town along from where I come from. And I think the taxi driver's response is to say, "What, you mean hillbilly country?" So, but Stanley, I was actually brought up on the east side of Stanley, right next to Beamish Museum. Anyone aware of Beamish Museum? Yeah, you've been there, you enjoyed it, yeah? That basically recreates the mid-1800s and the early 1900s as to what life was like in the northeast, and apparently it was put next to Stanley to give us a view of the future. Thank you, that's the first one. If you could laugh hysterically when I try jokes. Thank you for that one. So, let me introduce you to customer service. This is, let's make sure we've got the right one up there. I'm doing another session this afternoon, massage as a way of increasing employee engagement. I just wanted to make sure I had the right slides up. Now I'd just like to, I promised Mike we wouldn't do Q&A, but can anyone shout out where in the world this picture might have been taken? Geographically. America, America, yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Why would we think that picture was taken in America? I think, there are some clues. The French's mustard, the style of the old Formica tabletop, it reminds you of Happy Days, Formica tabletop, sort of easy sort of diner. And also the fact that if we were to attempt that in England, it would involve using either Henderson's relish, or Worcester sauce, which are very runny and very hard to write with. And believe me, I've tried. But it does highlight that, for me, customer service is very much a cultural thing, because people attribute levels of customer service. Often, the first thing that comes to mind is geographical. Where in the world do you get great customer service? And what you often find is that people will say, North America. Is that a fair point? Yeah? By show of hands, who's been to North America and had a great customer service experience? Right, if I was to quickly say now, who's been to Halifax and had a great customer experience? Well, yes, thank you. One person. And what's interesting, it tells us a lot that culturally customer service is very important there. And perhaps there are explanations at the next level. Customers are perhaps more demanding. There's more of a sense that every individual has the freedom to achieve what he or her wants, the great American dream. And perhaps, even when you listen to adverts on TV in America, they don't just talk about price and quality, they always talk about service. Service is one of the holy trinities of what keeps businesses going in the States. And I tweet when I get bored on an East Coast train coming back from London, things like, when is Krispy Kreme going to open in Stanley? No idea, soon. But you know, I think we've now got Cafe Nero in Halifax. I live in Wyke, sort of in between Bradford and Brighouse. This is like a local derby for me. I'm so pleased to be here. But you know, it gets you asking. I'm going to come to how I got started in this. But I do have to tell you, there is an explanation why service is so much better in the States. The main reason, you know why? It's because customers are armed. Now, if you need to think, I'm not sure actually if you'd approve of this these days, but I was going to suggest we did a pilot scheme in certain parts of Leeds where we armed the public to see whether or not service from the post office would improve. But unfortunately, we can't find any areas of Leeds that aren't already heavily armed. You know, so unfortunately, that won't work. But no, this point about if it's a cultural issue, and this is the big point I wanted to make, if customer service is a cultural issue, if it's a state of mind, then by definition, the way of approaching it has got to be emotional. It's got to engage at a psychological, philosophical level. The reasons that we're not strong at customer service are not logical, they're not mathematical, they're not scientific, because it's such an obvious thing to do. Businesses win when they practice great customer service. And it applies across all of the sectors. It'd be very easy for me to walk into here and start saying, £9,000 fees, what does that mean in terms of service? Yeah, you know that, you understand that. But actually, that's been an issue for British industry across all sectors for the last 20 to 30 years. And yet so few have been able to come to terms with the fact that the one reliable way of differentiating, of riding out economic downturns, and building advocacy for your organisation is through the way you treat your customers. And, you know, some of the barriers start before you even arrive. If you're trying to attract a new audience, one of the first things you do will be to cater for their needs on your website. Here's a question for you. How many professional British football clubs have a new fans button or new fans section on the homepage of their website?
None.
Thank you very much. Tell them what she's won, John. It's actually, we'll be running the SPL Family Champion Scheme. We've now got 4 of the 12 SPL clubs who have a new fans section. And it's not just where you group all the links together, because that assumes you know how football works. But it's for people whose kids want to go, whose kids are playing FIFA 2011, who are really enthusiastic about going, but whose parents come from my generation, and they have other barriers. They have negative perceptions of football. In fact, all of this came out of the fact that I actually wanted to find a way of making a business case for my family to accompany me up to the Stadium of Light every fortnight from Wyke. Now, I thought that was quite simple. I thought, I'll just take the football approach. Why wouldn't you? Which summarises their strategy, I think, quite succinctly. Why wouldn't you? It's football. Well, no. I'm sorry, are you challenging the validity of that business case? And Anna says to me, it's a 200-mile round trip. It's going to be expensive. The food, there'll probably be no healthy items. There'll be nothing going on before kick-off. It might be a 0-0. And then, of course, there's all the antisocial behaviour and abusive language. I was able to reassure her that we weren't staying with my parents on that particular trip. But you know, the bottom line was the same. It's very difficult. So let me group together the reasons why I believe that we have a low profile of customer service in this country. And what I want to try and show you is that, you know, when you get exposed to this by a real student story, and I've got 1 or 2 to share with you, it does begin to make you think that the answer is not doing more, it's not doing things better, it's certainly not just about smiling or being helpful, but it's that it dawns on you that you are only limited in what you can do in customer service by your ability to think differently, and that's the absolute key word. The other message that I hope will come through very strongly is that the one thing you also need to have is a unique identity, something that makes Leeds Met University special and unique. It could be something that's inherent in your values, how you operate as an organisation, could be in your history, your heritage. I mean, 6th best, you know, for quality of student experience globally is absolutely phenomenal. You went out for a meal in Leeds tonight and you were presented with a piece of haddock that's so underdone it's still making arrangements for the rest of the evening. The waitress walks past and says, "How is everything? What do you do?" It's nice, that's quite right, isn't it? Say, it's lovely, it's not, you know, it's not. It's, you have a Peter Kay moment, really, don't you? It's lovely. It's really isn't. I'm not coming back here. But do you go back to the restaurant? No, you don't. Do you tell your friends about it? Yes, you do. Do you give the restaurant an opportunity to rescue the situation? No, because we're British. And believe me, I've had some wonderful experiences in terms of culture. We had I used to work for the Halifax many years ago. I was a small business expert. Every large business I joined was usually a small one within a matter of weeks. That was the second joke, if you could sort of keep up. We had an American service excellence expert, a guy who advises universities among the clients, and he came across the Halifax in the mid-90s, and he told us that the only way we could survive as an organisation with the arrival of people like First Direct, who've been around now for 23 years, in case you were wondering, was to differentiate through the quality of the customer experience. We didn't know what he was talking about. And then when he went on to talk about force field analysis, fishbone, affinity grouping within the broader context of brainstorming, we knew he was mad. We had no idea what he was talking about. So we suggested that he go into Halifax and have a coffee, and we have a bit of a 10-minute break while we, as the distribution management team, contemplated what he just laid on us. However, this was 1996, and the coffee house explosion hadn't arrived in Halifax. In fact, with the exception of Cafe Nero, it still hasn't. What he had, and I'm pleased to finally have an audience who will appreciate the cultural context here, is the Merry England Coffee House. Thank you very much. You've been there. You seem quite, you know, you don't seem too traumatized, you know, for your experiences, though. No, but it is quite a unique cultural institution. There's even a drive-in one on the Rochdale Road at Huddersfield. It's almost like, you know, modern times and medieval put together in some strange sort of challenge, you know. And but anyway, this guy went in there, the American guy, and he came back about 10 minutes later. He was shaking like a leaf, and we said, "What happened?" He said, I got to tell you what happened. I went to the Merry England, and I was greeted by a long line of short, aggressive-looking women. And I said to the first one, can I get a cappuccino? And she said, and I quote, "You'll have to go to Leeds if you want one of those, love." Let's talk about language. I want to focus on language. I think this is really important. We demean the profile of customer service in this country through the language we attribute to it. And think back to America. When you think about your experiences in America that you recall so well, the waiter that you haven't seen in 4 years remembers you and your family's names. And I've got some great stories later on to tell you about just how good it can be here and abroad. And you think about that. Now, was that because the experience was memorable, unique, different, surprising, one in a million? It was, wasn't it? Or was it because it was standard? And we aspire to standards. But that word standard has sneaked in. We talk in business about standards. But actually, if I said to any one of you afterwards, would you like a standard night out in Otley? Do you see where I'm going? And then we have satisfaction. We talk about the customer satisfaction industry. Now, you know, with the possible exception of Ann Summers, I'm not sure satisfaction is a valid measurement term, you know, for anybody out there. Are we just trying to get satisfied students? Is that what we're after? Do you want your students to say, "I'm satisfied"? How likely are you going to go out and sing the praises of an organisation if what they do is simply satisfy you? Well, let me put it this way. Would you like a satisfactory night out in Guiseley? I don't know if that's a yes or a no. I think you're going to have to be... I think one or two people are thinking, actually, that would be quite good. You know? I mean, that would be a significant increase in the benchmark of thrilling excitement and you know, rib-tingling joy. But you know, the fact is that language comes through a lot. Let's think about how we describe, when we talk, just every day, informally, about people who are in customer-facing positions. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? All of you are in customer-facing positions. How does our language support that, the importance of that role? The fact that you are effectively the essence of people's perception of Leeds Met University. What you do every day with every student is absolutely remarkable, it's unique, and it's fundamental to this university's success. But no, what we say, if you're on a customer-facing position, is that you are on the front line. That's a military analogy. Think back to the First World War and Blackadder, you know? Yeah, that's really fired me up to provide great service. Put your tin hat on, are coming over. You know? And then what's the other one? At the sharp end. I don't want to be anywhere sharp. You know, sit on that spike and smile at that customer. That's not nice. And coming from County Durham, you then hear managers saying, yes, I'm going to spend some time at the coalface. Yes, I get an image of a lifeless pit pony being dragged up a shaft. You know, that doesn't make me feel particularly inspired. So I think language is a real issue. Let's get away from standard satisfaction. Let's look at memorable, unique, and different. Different, different. That's what I'm coming back to. I didn't mean to do that, by the way. To look at different, different, different. Just say another different, so it doesn't look quite so bad. You don't need me to tell you about computer says no. You know, this ridiculous adherence to rules, however much they inconvenience customers, which I imagine the AXA experience was probably similar to that one. But as a consequence of all of this, we've actually we have an inbuilt low aspiration of kids for customer service and a career in a customer-facing industry. But you take Motorola, for example. If you're a graduate management trainee and you go to work for Motorola, in your first week, do you go effectively into the call centre to speak to customers? Because that's what you would do in a British business if you work for a bank. First job, right in front of the customer, straight away. Go in front of the customer, and if you work really hard, we'll promote you away from customers so you don't have to see them and you can feel much better about yourself. No, in Motorola, you don't get to speak to customers till you've completed your 2-year graduate management trainee probationary period, and as a reward, you get to spend a day in the call centre speaking to customers. That is the aspiration of any Motorola graduate, and as a consequence, that ethos then begins to rise up through the organisation where the customer genuinely is at the top of the pile and not something we say just because it's, you know, the sort of thing that we should say if we're a good corporate organisation.